It's the first week of July, and I'm out in the yard doing a little bit of shooting. This is normally the official start of my preseason preparation, my off-season shooting, getting ready for the season. Some people shoot year-round, and I used to when I was younger, but I don't compete, which is probably too bad. But I don't start usually until about the 1st of July, and then by October, I'm ready to go. It only takes really about a month for me to get into shape. But anyway, what I want to talk about today is why I believe that every bow hunter should have 2 releases. So I'm going to show you both of them, what purpose they serve, and why I think it's important to have one that you hunt with, and then one that you do a lot of your preseason, off-season shooting with, more like a training aid. So let me talk first about the one that I hunt with. And I've got the Hawk Swivel. And this is a B3 release. We'll show you a couple of tight shots of that in just a second. But that's a B3 archery release. I like something real simple like this. It's got the open hook, short distance between the trigger and the hook. So it's real easy to keep your full draw length. Most releases are like that now, but in the old days, there used to be a long ways between the trigger and the jaw. And that meant that when you went to a string knocking loop, you lost a whole bunch of draw length. And you don't want to do that because you lose power stroke. You don't really lose draw length, you lose power stroke. The distance that you're drawing the string back under tension. I want to create a surprise release with every shot that I take, whether I'm hunting or on the range, because it's hard to spoil the shot when your brain doesn't issue a now command. It's that now command that gets you in trouble. You get like real twitchy and like target panic is really what that boils down to, because you're trying to anticipate when the pin is going to be on the spot. But what you really want to do is just squeeze the trigger, let the pin float in the area that you're trying to hit, and then let the shot go off without you controlling the timing. So that's what I do with my hunting release. That's my goal with the hunting release. So I'm going to take that shot first and talk about it, and then I'm going to tell you why this other release makes it so much easier to do that. Okay, full draw, finger wrapped around the trigger, deep into the finger, squeeze, squeeze. And I know when I make a good shot because my hand comes back and sets on my right shoulder. That means that I'm relaxed, pulling through the shot, and then my hand just falls back on the shoulder. So now I want to talk about the other release. So this second release that I'm going to show you is the B3 Ranger. And this is a pure back tension release. And we'll show you some tighter shots of it, for cutaways here. But the idea is there's a half moon shaped trigger mechanism. And then as you pull it and turn it, this little hinge falls off the edge of the half moon shape and then allows the trigger or the jaw, the hook, to go, and it just lets the string go, lets the knocking loop go. So you're drawing back, there's no trigger. You're holding it at full draw, and as you're turning it, then all of a sudden it just flicks past the end of that half moon and it dumps the string. So the advantage of that, of course, is you don't know when it's going to go off, and you can't control the timing of the shot quite as well. I mean, eventually, if you shoot it enough, you'll get to where you can time it. Then you just need to change the position of the half moon and start over again. But the whole idea is to train your body to get used to a surprise release. And that's, it's really more of a central nervous system thing than anything else. I've shown it before on videos where I'll have somebody come up and trigger my hunting release while I'm holding the bow at full draw. And that way I have no idea when it's going to go off. That's what it's supposed to feel like. And if you have somebody do that, and it'll freak you out at first, but eventually you get used to it. That's what the shot is supposed to feel like. This Ranger will help you learn that during the off season. You shoot this enough, then you go back onto your hunting release, and you can more easily create that surprise release by squeezing the trigger on the hunting release. So like I said, I go from the Ranger back to the Hawk, as I get closer to hunting. So let me take a couple shots with this, show you how it works, and then we'll wrap up after that. These back tension releases can be a little bit intimidating at first because you have to make sure when you draw it back that you're not, rotating it because you don't want it obviously to fire while you're drawing it. So the trick is, of course, you can set the position of the half moon so you can control when it goes off with respect to the angle of the handle, but you can also compensate by using your index finger and your thumb to draw the bow, because it's got a little thumb handle on there. So I pull back with my index finger and my thumb. Then when I get to full draw, then I drop the thumb off that knurl and start rotating with the other fingers, the outside two, and that's what fires the shot. Like I said, don't let it intimidate you. It'll be kind of freak you out at first, but after the first couple of shots, it's no big deal. Okay, hit full draw, aiming. So now I'm just rotating. If you see my hand, it's just rotating. So the idea again is that you don't know when it's going to go. Shot fires, your hand comes back and sets on your shoulder. I do all of my shooting, whether it's off season or hunting, wearing a pair of these really cheap brown jersey gloves. And I do that for a couple of reasons. One, I do like the slipperiness of the gloved hand on the grip, because I want the bow to be able to pivot in my hand when I'm drawing it, because I don't want the skin to catch and create friction. Then that creates torque in the shot, where then the bow will snap back to whatever position that the skin is kind of pulling it into. Because when the arrow or when the release goes, the bow is going to try to assume the lowest torque position. That means it might be moving while the arrow is still attached. So that's one reason. The other reason is because I hunt with gloves on, and I hunt with the same style of gloves, just because I like the dexterity of being able to use my fingers. I can keep them in pockets if it's really cold out. So, I'm feeling really comfortable when the hunting season comes shooting in gloves, because I've been shooting in gloves during the entire off season. So that's why I do it. I'm sure there's way better gloves on the market for shooting, but at 97 cents per glove per pair, it's kind of hard to go wrong with the brown jerseys. So in conclusion, I feel like every serious bow hunter should have two releases. They should have a hunter, and as I mentioned, mine is the B3 Hawk, and they should have an off-season release for training, a back tension release. And you can go back and forth between them. I usually will shoot the off-season release until about 10 days or so before I start to hunt, because I want to have as much reinforcement of that surprise release as possible before I go back to something with a trigger. But it's not that hard to learn how to trigger even an index finger release by surprise. You just have to reprogram your central nervous system. Well, hopefully that helped you. This has really transformed the way that I shoot a bow. I mean, I used to really struggle with target panic, getting twitchy, even getting nervous on game, where I would maybe shoot too quick. But learning to trigger the shot by surprise really made me more accurate and slowed down the whole process, so that I'm a lot more confident when I'm aiming at an animal too. Well, I appreciate you joining us. We'll see you right back here again in the future for another episode of The Setup.